Good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to you all here at the Trinity Methodist Church for being the host, and thank them again for hosting this location. I'd like to advise members that the meeting is being live streamed and officers will be bringing a microphone to each speaker. Everyone should allow a moment for the microphone to get to them before speaking. I'm now going to read the evacuation information. The building is protected by a fire alarm system with siren sounders and flashing lights in some rooms. On hearing the evacuation alarm, please leave the building by the nearest marked exit route. Fire exits are to my left and right and at the back of this room through the main entrance to the building. Proceed to the assembly point situated within the car park and only take valuables immediately to hand. Anyone who requires assistance will be helped by the officers present after other people have left. Do not return to the building until told it is safe to do so by the senior fire brigade officer attending or church representative in the case of a false alarm. Smoking or any naked flame is not permitted in the building. Filming from the public seating area is permitted, but members must refrain from filming so as not to distract the meeting. Mobile phones must be switched to silent. Thank you. I'm going to now ask Vice Chairman to do the opening prayer.
Thank you, Chairman. O Lord, grant us courage to strive for what is right and good, courtesy to listen to those of different opinion, strengthen us through difficulties and pressures, and guide us in our hour of deliberations, so that we may act in the interest of all in our district, to the glory of your holy name. Amen.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Members, I'm quite sure that you all share my deepest concern and sadness at the terrible loss of life in Ukraine at the present time. My sincerest sympathy and prayers go out to the bereaved families and indeed to all families in Ukraine who find themselves in the most distressful, difficult and dangerous circumstances possible. I would ask the Leader of the Council to make a statement on behalf of the Council about this tragic situation. Leader.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman, and good evening, members. It is at times like this that it's incumbent on us to all express the horror that people across our communities are feeling at the actions of the Putin regime in Ukraine. And I think in doing so, we must make clear our absolute solidarity with the Ukrainian people who are suffering from the most outrageous attack on their sovereignty and on their humanity. And I know that people across Mid Sussex will hold in their thoughts the innocent victims who have suddenly had war foisted upon them. I think it's appropriate, Chairman, that on behalf of the Council and our communities that you and I write to the Ukrainian ambassador to the UK to express the solidarity of Mid Sussex and send our very best wishes to the people of Ukraine. And I'll also write to the Prime Minister to urge the government to do all it can to support Ukraine and indeed to provide shelter to those fleeing for safer shores. Chairman, I know I will not be the only one in this chamber, let alone in our wider community, who wakes every morning at the moment and checks their phone to see if Kiev is still standing. And at such times, I know we can feel helpless and powerless as aggression that we thought was no longer possible in Europe unfolds in front of our eyes. And we have played a role as a United Kingdom in providing significant support to Ukraine and to help build a global coalition for severe and punitive sanctions against the Putin regime. Undoubtedly, the government will ask councils to assist in resettling refugees from Ukraine, and we stand ready to play our part in that as we've done with previous requests to support with refugee resettlement programmes. And it will be clear to all of us that our country will need to be warm-hearted and generous in its support for those fleeing the horrors of war in Europe. But Chairman, we all know this is not just about Ukraine. It's about the rule of law or the rule of the bomb, between democracy and dictatorship, about the choice between freedom and oppression. Ukraine is facing very dark times, but I think people around the world will also be inspired by the immense courage, bravery and determination being shown by the Ukrainian people as they defend not just their country, but hold the torch of freedom for the world. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. If any of the group leaders may wish to comment, Councillor Bennett, would you like to say a few words?
Thank you, Chairman. It is very hard to find the words that can do justice to the feelings of horror, disbelief and helplessness that I am sure all of us have felt since Russia invaded Ukraine last week. I and my group strongly condemn this unprovoked act of war and affirm democratic Ukraine's sovereignty and independence. We, as local politicians, have limited capacity to influence events 1,000 miles away. But we must do that which is in our power. We must seek to minimise the trauma of those in Mid Sussex who have links to Ukraine, are Ukrainian, or who urgently need sanctuary and safety here. I admired the leader of the County Council's call to align our support for refugees with those of our European friends, and urge this council to do the same. As the writer Tim Montgomery said this week about our refugee response, it is an enormous privilege to have been born British, and with that privilege comes responsibility and generosity. Please offer sanctuary to Ukrainian refugees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. Councillor Eaves.
Thank you, Chairman. Our group deplores the invasion of Ukraine and condemns the unprovoked aggression against a sovereign nation in the strongest terms. Russia invading Ukraine is almost like England invading Scotland, quite ludicrous given the interconnectedness of the two countries, the level of intermarriage and community between them. For the invasion to be timed in the middle of winter shows a perverse and calculated cruelty with regard to the civilian population whose windows are blown out, electricity and water cut off, and who are spending many hours in underground bunkers. We welcome the most stringent sanctions against Russian economic interests and call for an end once and for all to the influence of Russian money in our democracy, and we must see the report on the investigation into Russian interference in our elections. Residents are already getting in touch asking how they can help the Ukrainian people. We call on the government to make it easy for Ukrainian refugees to come here temporarily without a visa for 90 days, to extend family unification to include siblings, for example, and to match the EU temporary protection provisions, which are likely to be introduced in a few days' time. We call upon the British government to step up to the plate and take their fair share of these refugees. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eaves. Councillor Gibson, did you want to say a few words?
Yes, please, Chairman. I drafted a few words yesterday, and then, as happenings in so many places, the world changed slightly this lunchtime. I received a message from a Ukrainian friend who is in Kiev. He is posting on a Facebook site that he's a YouTube site that he's set up, what is happening out there on a daily basis. He's a former senior official in their equivalent of the Foreign Office. And I thought I'd ask him what I should say this evening. And hopefully you'll get the gist from this.
Hi, first of all, let's start. This is clear genocide against the Ukrainian nation. Putin wants to kill our nation in general. He's attacking civilian objects. He's targeting everyone, not only military personnel, but kids, men, women, all of them. This is not only about restoration of...
It goes on. This is also about the very existence of our country. From this point, we need wider support, and we need both economic sanctions against Russians, and we need humanitarian aid. And please say that Ukrainians know I'm watching very closely what our friends overseas are doing, especially in the UK, because we in Ukraine regard you as our biggest and closest allies. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gibson. I know that many people would like to speak, but if, I think that the speakers have already expressed their horror at the situation, and if I may, I will move on with the agenda. Thank you. So I'm going to move on to item 2, to receive questions from members of the public pursuant to Council Procedure Rule 9. We have 4 questions received which we have to have, we have a 15-minute maximum for all the questions. Question 1 is from Mr. Kenwood. He is not here, so I will read his question. With the NHS likely to be vacating Clare Hall soon and the steering group findings not expected to be known until September, what plans have Council made to facilitate the venue's return to use in line with the court order of the 13th of January 2020, which states, "Nothing shall prejudice the use of Clare Hall as a vaccination centre or require it to be opened contrary to law." Do members regret allowing the wrecking amendments made to the motion tabled by the Lib Dems on the 29th of September 2021, which, if adopted, would have catered for this very scenario? May I ask for a response to the question from Leader, Councillor Jonathan Ash-Edwards?
Thank you very much, Chairman, and thank you to Mr. Kenwood for the question. Since December 2020, there has been a meanwhile use in operation with the NHS using Clare Hall. Today, the Council has announced that it has extended the licence for the NHS to use Clare Hall as a COVID vaccination centre. The NHS has been vaccinating local residents against COVID-19 at Clare Hall since December 2020, as I said, and delivered an incredible 194,000 jabs so far. The new licence will run until February 2024 and will allow the NHS to continue delivering this important service. I'm also really pleased to see that the licence extension will enable the NHS to provide additional primary care services alongside vaccinations to support the community's wider health needs, and I know that will be welcomed by many in our community. Chairman, I would like to highlight the use of Clare Hall by the NHS as a vaccination centre is a temporary measure, and this Council is continuing to explore all the options for providing modern new community facilities on the site for the benefit of local residents. The Council has agreed an evidence-based approach to look at how this can be delivered, and the work is unaffected by the extension of the licence, and we will act on the mandate given during the public consultation that showed that the public overwhelmingly want to see change on the site.
Thank you, Leader. The second question is from Miss Wilcock. Is she with us? Hello. Would you like to proceed with your question?
Thank you. Please would you advise why, although it has been announced nationally and Mid Sussex District Council have been formally notified that Clare Hall is now officially on the Theatres Trust Theatres at Risk Register, the Theatres Trust being a statutory body, there has been no mention of this material fact in any council report or statement? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Wilcock. I ask the Leader to respond, please.
Thank you very much, Mrs Wilcock, for your question, which does allow me to clarify some of the issues around the status of Clare Hall. Obviously, how the Theatres Trust communicate is a matter for them. This council wasn't informed nor consulted by the Theatres Trust on their decision, and indeed it comes as a surprise. The council has written to the Trust to clarify the status of the site as a community facility, and we were surprised indeed to see that they have proceeded as they have. Indeed, it is very disappointing to see that factually incorrect information has been put into the public domain by the Theatres Trust, stating the council was considering selling the site. This is factually incorrect, and in December the Cabinet agreed to develop proposals for modern community facilities on the site based on evidence-based work to develop investment options so that we have sustainable modern community facilities on the Clare Hall site. Chairman, indeed, the Director of the Theatres Trust has apologised for the factually incorrect information that they have put into the public domain, and I hope they will continue to further correct the incorrect statements they are continuing to make and engage positively with the Council's evidence-based approach to this work. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you. Could I please clarify whether you are still regarding Clare Hall as a theatre or a performance space, and therefore any replacement facilities will have performance-based facilities? Thank you.
Do you wish to respond, or do you wish to provide a written response?
Chair, if I may, I'll provide a written response because there are some quite important planning matters in terms of the planning status that it's important that are properly communicated. Thank you, Chairman.
You have a written response. to that question. Thank you.
I'm so sorry, I couldn't actually quite hear it, but I'll pick it up on the read.
We will provide, the councillor leader will provide you with a written response. Thank you. I'm going to move on to question 3 from Mr. Kingsley Young. I don't believe Mr. Young is present, so I'm going to read his question. Having come under rightful criticism both by your electorate on social media and by other members of council, how will the steering committee ensure impartiality and transparency over the feasibility study into Clare Hall to ensure that any examination or result isn't contaminated by the group's bias towards demolition and redevelopment? Again, I'm going to ask the leader to respond.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you to Mr. Kingsley Young for the question. In December, the Cabinet agreed to undertake evidence-led work to determine the best way forward to deliver modern, fit-for-purpose community facilities on the Clare Hall site. The Cabinet has now established a member steering group to provide oversight and guidance as detailed options are investigated, and this will be a joint group with Haywardsheath Town Council. I'd like to thank the Town Council for their involvement in the work. This is the same governance structure that the Council has used for projects in Burgess Hill involving Burgess Hill Town Council. The development of investment options will be assisted by a number of specialists, including external specialist advisors with experience in the arts, culture and leisure sectors. And using their expertise, we will conduct market research, engagement and analysis to develop detailed proposals for review by the member steering group. But Chairman, I will not compromise on the goal, which is, as per the mandate of the public consultation that showed 95% of people wanted to see change and modernisation and improvement on the Clare Hall site, we will work to deliver modern, fit-for-purpose community and entertainment provision on that site. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Leader. Well, obviously, as Mr. Kingsley Young is not with us, there won't be a supplementary question. So in that case, I'm moving on to question 4, a question from Ms. Einstein.
I'm Jenny Weinstein from Mid Sussex Climate Coalition. According to a report by UK Climate Emergency, and I've provided the reference in writing, which measured the plans of local councils on climate change, Mid Sussex District Council scored 20, where other district councils such as Stroud and East Devon scored 77 and 78 respectively. We understand that a sustainability strategy for Mid Sussex will be considered by the council shortly. We are aware that businesses were consulted about the economic impact of the strategy, but how were residents, community groups and environmental groups consulted about the environmental and ecological aspects of development of the strategy?
Question. I'm going to ask Councillor Belsey to respond.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you for the question. There has, for over a year now, been a variety of dialogues and conversations happening that have and will continue to inform the development of this important strategy as we move forward and its delivery. From 12th November to 6th December 2020, the Council, in partnership with the County Council and the Local Government Association's Local Partnerships LLP, undertook a district-wide survey to capture the views and behaviours of residents in respect to climate actions. A total of 2,397 responses were received. The public engagement sought and received views on the best approaches for the Council to communicate and engage with a wide range of audiences around the topics of climate change, how COVID-19 has impacted on resident behaviours, particularly in relation to climate actions which reduce emissions, and how residents could be encouraged to make changes to their behaviour to reduce their greenhouse gas emissions. The results of this engagement had informed the strategy as it has developed and has been supplemented with feedback from a wide range of meetings with community stakeholder organisations and forums throughout 2021, including, but not limited to, the Mid Sussex Partnership and its subgroups, community forums hosted by Mid Sussex Voluntary Action and the Sussex Nature Partnership. As we move towards the detail of the delivery of the strategy, it will be essential that we continue and grow that conversation. This is an incredibly important strategy for our district, and we recognise that for it to succeed, we need to work in partnership. That will include working with groups like the Mid Sussex Climate Coalition to to identify and deliver the many actions that be required to ensure we have a vibrant district that is attractive, resilient and innovative, that balances social well-being, environmental protection and sustainable economic growth. I look forward to continuing that conversation with you in the weeks and months ahead. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Darcy. Ms Weinstein, did you wish to ask a supplementary question?
Thank you. That was a very positive response. I mean, you're probably aware that a new report came out from the International Committee on Climate Change yesterday, warning that climate change is happening much faster and much more frequent, more severe weather events than had been anticipated at this stage. Could you just tell me how urgently and how soon this partnership will be set up with the local community and environmental groups to actually implement the plan which has yet to be passed?
Councillor Darcy, do you wish to give a written response to that question?
Yes, I'll give a written response, but I believe the sustainable economic strategy is being debated at the next council meeting, and so, or in the next month. So I will provide a written response, but hopefully that will give you some assurance that there will be imminent growth of the conversation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Are you happy to stay? If you would like to stay, you can go to the public section of the, or if you wish to leave, we do understand. Thank you very much for coming and for your questions. I'm now going to move on to item 3, to confirm the minutes of the meeting of council held on the 26th of January 2022. Can I ask the members to verbally agree the minutes from pages 5 to 16 on your agenda? Could you like to? Right. I think they all agreed. Thank you very much. And now moving on to item 4, to receive declaration of interest from members in respect of any matter on the agenda. Any members wish to declare an interest, would they please raise their hand? I see none. Oh, I see Councillor Eccleston.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I'm not sure if it's a declaration of interest, but there's an amendment to the budget which relates to Burgess Hill and the involvement of Burgess Hill Town Council, and I'm leader of Burgess Hill Town Council.
Thank you. If there's no other declarations, I'm going to move on to item 5. So this item is to consider any items that the Chairman of the Council agrees to take as urgent business. I have one urgent business item recommended by the Audit Committee, which is tabled for your information. The tabled item, the procurement of an external auditor. This is proposed by Councillor Pulfer and seconded by Councillor Cromie. Councillor Pulfer, would you like to introduce this?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I'm very happy to recommend that this council join the... Start again. Thank you. I'm very happy to recommend that this council is recommended to join the national PSAA procurement for the external auditor with the contract starting on the 1st of April 2023 and running through to 2028. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Councillor Cromie, do you wish to speak now or to reserve your right? Thank you. Can I have any members, would they raise their hand if they have any questions or comments on this particular item of the agenda? I see none. So Councillor Cromie, do you wish to speak? No, you're fine. So we're going to state the recommendations being voted on behalf of the viewers and listening members. The recommendation of the council is recommended to join in the nationwide PSAA procurement for an external auditor with a contract starting 1st of April 2023 and running to 2028. Could I have a show of hands if they're in agreement?
Clear majority, Chairman.
Thank you. Moving on to the Chairman's announcements, recent engagements are shown there. And I have to say that we went to, my husband, my consort came, we went to visit Marne Court last week, and it really was an incredibly well built structure, and the families that were moving in there were really happy, and it was a terrific standard of workmanship, and if we can have a few more of those throughout the district, it would be really excellent. So I have nothing really more to say, so I'm going to move on to item 7, is the appointment of the Deputy Leader of the Council. This is proposed by Councillor Ash Edwards and seconded by Councillor Webster. Councillor Ash Edwards, would you like to speak?
Thank you very much, Chairman. So it falls to me to ask the Council to endorse and formally appoint Councillor John Belsey as the new Deputy Leader. Councillor Belsey, I think, is an outstanding candidate for the role. He has long experience as a councillor in Mid Sussex and has been a very strong portfolio holder, and I believe will undertake the Deputy Leader role diligently and in a very supportive way to myself and the rest of the Cabinet, and so I would ask the Council to endorse that. Chairman, there will be some consequential changes to portfolio responsibilities. Councillor Belsey won't be doing exactly the same role as Councillor Llewellyn Burke, and so those will be confirmed and circulated to members shortly. And Chairman, it's my aim to bring the Cabinet back up to 7 members at annual Council in May. Thank you.
Thank you. This motion is seconded by Councillor Webster. Do you wish to speak, Councillor Webster?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to reserve my right. Thank you.
No problem. Has a member wish to have any question? Otherwise, we'll go to a vote. I see no. Councillor Webster, do you wish to speak, or shall we go straight to the vote?
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to say that I am very happy to second this appointment.
Thank you. Okay, a vote will be taken by show of hands, so please, members are invited to raise your hand if you're in agreement. Thank you.
Clear majority, Chair.
Thank you. Congratulations, Councillor Belsey. So we're moving on to item 8, the recommendations from Cabinet held on the 14th of February 2022, pages 17 to 18 in your agenda. This is proposed by Councillor Ash Edwards and it's seconded by Councillor Belsey. Councillor Ash Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and formally propose that we agree the recommendations set out in the papers from the April to December budget management. And I would just draw the Council's attention to the improving position in relation to the deficit that we face, but that there is still one. And we will continue to need to manage that and bring that back into balance as soon as we can. And that's really important, but equally, that is driven, as we've discussed before, by the support we're providing for our leisure centres in order to keep them running and bouncing back from COVID. So I would ask the Council to agree the recommendations, Chairman.
Councillor Belsey, do you wish to speak now or to reserve your right? Thank you. Have any members got any questions or comments? If so, please indicate by raising your hand. The microphone's coming to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to detail, if any more detail can be provided on the reasons for the efficiency specific reserve in terms of are there any proposals for expenditure from this reserve and how it will be governed. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ash Edwards, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. specific reserves such as that allow for the council to be able to invest in service improvement and efficiency works. We quite often sort of work on an invest-to-save basis, and so those kind of projects need to be pump-primed, and that's what that is there for.
Anybody, other member wishes to speak? If not, I'm going to go to Councillor Belsey.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm happy to move to a vote.
The recommendations are listed on page 17. Due to their length, it is not my intention to read them out. So we go to the vote, and by a show of hands, please raise your hands if in agreement. Thank you. Now we're going to move on to an important, very important, corporate plan and budget, item 9 on your agenda for 2022-23, pages 19 to 26 on your agenda. This item is proposed by Councillor Ash Edwards and seconded by Councillor Belsey. Councillor Ash Edwards would like to introduce this.
Thank you very much, Chairman. And firstly, can I begin by thanking the members of the Scrutiny Committee that considered the draft budget and corporate plan at its meeting back in January. It's always a very good meeting and some important questions and challenge to the work that we're bringing forward. And actually I was very pleased to see the level of cross-party support that existed at that meeting for the budget and corporate plan. Chairman, this is a delivery-focused budget focused on residents' priorities. We are recovering from the impact of the COVID pandemic, and this budget and corporate plan is about what we're going to do next to deliver on the things that residents tell us are important to them, some of which have been delayed due to the pandemic and all the pressures that has brought. And throughout, our job is to bring the budget back into balance over time while delivering the frontline services that our residents expect. We're continuing, as I've just alluded to provide the financial support that our leisure centres need while working to phase out this subsidy as soon as we are able to safely do so. And Chairman, I know that we're having this discussion about the budget at a time when people are worried about the cost of living and the pressures that people in our communities are under. And so this budget means that Mid Sussex's share of council tax will continue to be the third lowest of all the districts and boroughs in Sussex. And as part of the government's help for the cost of living, in April we will be administering the £150 cash rebate through the council tax system directly to help people in the lowest value properties, which often, not exclusively I accept, will be the lowest income families. Chairman, I want to just give the Council a flavour of some of the commitments being brought forward as part of this budget and corporate plan for either delivery in this year or significant step forward this year if they're a multi-year project. Later this year, 3,000 households will be invited to take part in a pilot of the new food waste collection service. Councillor Belsey has already alluded to in answer to the public question to the new sustainable economy strategy that we'll be debating next time that will help set this council on the path to net zero. And as we're thinking about our environment and everything around us that we value and that makes Mid Sussex a great place to live, this year is a critical year for delivering our ambitious parks investment programme, with improvements getting underway in Mount Noddy in East Grinstead, Victoria Park in Haywards Heath, Hemsleys and Finchesfield in Pease Pottage, and plans to follow for St John's Park in Burgess Hill as well. And with stakeholders this year, we will also take significant steps forward on the master planning and implementation of our new Centre for Outdoor Sports ahead of construction starting next year to provide a new high-quality multi-sports facility for Mid Sussex, the biggest investment in sports provision in our district for a generation. As I said, we're working to bring forward plans for new modern community and entertainment facilities on the Clare Hall site, playground improvements to be carried out at playgrounds in Haywards Heath and East Grinstead, and our full fibre digital infrastructure project due to complete over the next year that's seen nearly 100 kilometres of fibre being laid in our district, a significant intervention to support our economy and to support small businesses and the digital enabled economy that is going to be so essential. But Chairman, we also understand in this budget and in our overall work our obligation to people less fortunate than ourselves. We talked at the beginning of this meeting about Ukraine, but closer to home, sadly, homelessness is a growing challenge for many households and the risk of homelessness, and we're acting to acquire more temporary accommodation, increasing our homelessness prevention teams so that we can intervene to support families before homelessness can possibly occur. Those are all the actions of a council that is focused on the needs of the community, delivering and using its resources sensibly within the constraints that we all know about to ensure that we support our economy, we support the vulnerable people in our community, we move on that journey towards net zero, and we invest in all the things, whether it's parks or playgrounds or sports provision that make our district great. And Chairman, I formally therefore propose the budget and look forward to the debate that members will have. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bielsi, do you wish to speak now or reserve your right?
I reserve my right, please, Chairman.
Thank you. Members, if any members wishes to have a question or make a comment, please raise your hand. Councillor Marsh.
I saw you coming this time. Thank you, Chairman. I welcome this budget, and what I do welcome is, as the leader alluded to at the beginning of his statement, that it was unanimous. Well, it was well supported, should we say, across the scrutiny committee for this budget, which I find quite strange then, because we haven't got to these two amendments, that they weren't raised at the time, which I will comment on when we get to that stage. But what I do welcome, this is a budget for the whole of the district, and I do believe that certain members in this room today and who are absent forget they are district councillors, not just ward councillors. So therefore, I'm supportive when I sat on that table of what was happening in the southern part of the district as the northern part of the district. And I think that seems to have got lost a little bit in translation. So I welcome this, and I particularly welcome the fact, finally, in the budget, Hemsley's and Finch's Field, in my part of the world, are finally going to get done. So I welcome that, and I thank the Cabinet for announcing that, and hopefully tonight the budget will go through and the residents in Pease Pottage will get what they've been after for the last 10 years. So I really do hope it does go through today, and I do hope that all the other goodies in here from across the district, that's East Grinstead and Haywards Heath, and latterly to come to Burgess Hill, that their playing fields will get upgraded as well. But it's not just that, it's all the other bits that it was been alluded to. So I'm actually welcome this one, because we have come out of a terrible 2-year cycle, and we are coming out of a terrible 2-year cycle. And the council, because of the good work that we've done over the years, and this is my 20th budget, consecutive budget, sorry, no, 19th, I haven't done next year's yet. So I do think that the challenges of the last 2 years have been extraordinary, and I do think that I welcome the people of scrutiny, I welcome the Cabinet, and I do commend this, that we all should vote for it. Thank you.
Councillor Hillier.
Tempted to say what he said, but I have prepared something. I'm afraid, like Councillor Eaves, have come here hot foot from the Burgess Hill Business Park Association AGM, so I haven't learnt my line, so I'm going to have to read it. It won't come as a surprise to anyone here today that I'm fully in support of this budget and corporate plan. However, I'd like to make a few comments that relate to my portfolio, my community, and firstly around some context. This also will be my 19th local authority budget, and the only Conservative one that I can recall, but this may be selective memory, but I'm pretty sure I'm right, recall the one that has required the use of reserves. Most of them have been balanced by prudent budgeting, seeking the best value for our residents' money, reaping the benefits of innovative invest-to-save initiatives, and basically cutting our cloth to suit the resources available. This cannot be said of some of the Liberal Democrat budgets that colleagues and I saw, and And I think the Venerable Vice Chairman might be the only other person who was serving this council back in 1995, leaving the Conservatives afterwards as ever to do the dirty and painful work of rebuilding the balance sheet. So this for me is an unusual budget in that it does rely upon the use of reserves. But after the havoc of the pandemic, and whilst not completely comfortable, I am certain that this corporate plan and budget are in the best interests of our residents. This is not the time to be cutting services, particularly those that support the most vulnerable, but also recognising the importance of things like the leisure and parks portfolio of my colleague, Councillor Belsey, how important we've now come to realise they are in the well-being of our residents, be they young or old, rich or poor. Coming to my portfolio, I am really, really proud of the support that this plan gives the important work that we do in supporting our local economy. And my sense is that not only is this work important, but also exemplary in many regards, and we punch above our weight. And though this part of the plan is not statutory, it is, in my opinion, immensely important on a number of levels. Having more local jobs increases the spend in our local economy. The reduced commute has a hugely beneficial impact upon our well-being and therefore of those loved ones around us. More importantly, as if anything could be more important, with the need to reduce our carbon footprint at the forefront of all rational minds, local jobs mean a reduction in the need to commute, which reduces the carbon impact not only of the journeys, but also the carbon cost of continually investing in our transport infrastructure to cope with the volume. And also that we are seeing our amazingly innovative industries are actively contributing to carbon footprint reduction. And it is looking like much of this is going to be reflected in emerging sustainable economic strategy, which has been an excellent piece of cross-party working. I'll be honest and confess that until I moved to Bentswood and got closely involved in children's social care, I kind of thought of local government and national government's economic work as mostly being about breadheads and wealth creation. I now have a better understanding of the importance it plays in the social fabric of all of our residents and communities. I have sadly learnt about children and young people coming down in the morning before school, finding one or more parents still prone on the sofa and unable or unwilling to support their young ones in getting to school on time, or even to give them a healthy breakfast, leaving them to grab a fizzy or energy drink and a packet of crisps on the way to the school. And alas, I regularly see this as they walk past my gate. So creating jobs can bring order to households, particularly our most vulnerable ones, and reducing what social services would call chaotic lives. I have, of course, noted the amendments from the opposition, but won't be supporting for a number of obvious reasons, not least that, as my previous colleague has pointed out, unlike this budget, they have not been subject to cross-party scrutiny and have been, for some unfathomable reason, been bounced into the debate within the last 24 hours. That is no way to set a robust budget and plan. Touching on the Burgess Hill Amendment, I would like to point out the phenomenal amount of inward investment that the town is receiving, and this council has also facilitated the very well-received Welcome Back Fund monies. And even this week, the representatives of the Shop Appy initiative that I think I mentioned at the last full council are speaking directly to retailers, and I can tell you that the Burgess Hill sign-ups are going very well and could see Burgess Hill Pit East Grinstead to be the first to launch to the public. So on a final note, and returning to my opening comments, the fact that we are proposing a budget that reluctantly makes little use of reserves underlines one of the key reasons why I'm a Conservative. And that is that we are not relentlessly driven by some outdated ideology that constrains our thoughts and actions, but that we simply aim to do the right thing at the time. I am confident that this budget is in the interest of our residents, and thank you very much indeed for your time.
Thank you. Councillor Demir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I don't really want to follow that because I haven't written anything and I haven't learnt anything. But I did just want to say that I am fully supportive of this budget and corporate plan. And the reason being, because it's so wonderful to see how aspirational this plan is. In these challenging times where we've had to dip into reserves, we are still looking to the future, to the vision. And I think that's brilliant, and I'm totally in support of it. As a ward councillor, obviously I'm absolutely delighted that the Dolphin Centre Park is going to be looked at. The park around the Dolphin Centre, if you don't know it, is a green lung. It's surrounded in housing, and more we have big apartment blocks having been built and are planned. We need this kind of greenness for our families. So I'm really, really delighted about that. Obviously, I'm also glad to see within my portfolio that we are focusing still on cyber security, because we all know how important that is, and I know how hard our teams have worked to keep us safe and secure. So this is all good work. And obviously, I'm extraordinarily proud of our 3, 4, 5 projects for laying fibre for the digital infrastructure. They've done a fantastic job. As the leader said, already 100 kilometres laid. We're nearly there. It's going to be finished. Some of it is finished and will be commercialised come the end of the summer in the autumn. So I'm really, really proud of us, what we've done on a shoestring, and the aspirations that we are looking to deliver in the next year. Thank you, Madam Chair.
I just should have said at the outset, we are trying to keep comments and questions to 3 minutes. That's all right.
He was much younger.
I know. It was noted. Anyway, Councillor Trumbull.
Thank you, Chairman. Like Councillor Demir, I haven't got anything prepared. The leader said earlier on that this is a budget where we are recovering from the pandemic, the worst pandemic we've seen for 100 years. And it has been a torrid time, no question about that. And I can see that within this budget we are focusing on priorities that are important for our residents in Mid Sussex. Councillor Hillier mentioned this use of reserves. And that does concern me going forward, because when we look at the medium-term financial plan, which we'll see on 104 of the pack, and it's terribly difficult forecasting what's going to happen next year, let alone 4 years ahead. But if we look at that, we can see that we are still projecting using reserves to balance our budget in 25-26. So it's taking a long time to get us out of the situation from the pandemic. That concerns me. And I hope, and I would welcome the leader's reassurance, that we are working to minimise the use of our reserves going forward. I can't claim quite the longevity of Councillor Hillier or Councillor Marsh in terms of the budgets that I've seen. I think this is about my 12th, I'm not sure. Although I am certain that I had more hair when I did my first budget. But what I am aware of is that in the past, this council was very concerned to harbour and manage its reserves for just such eventualities. I've been part of the budget process for all of those years, and it's been one of the key features I've been concerned about. And that's my concern. That's why my concern is there going forward. Had we not done that, we would not be offering our residents the third lowest council tax in Sussex. So it's only through good management in the past that we're able to be in this position now for our residents. Hence, again, I'll emphasise my concern about the management of reserves going forward. And I emphasise also that we should be concerned about how we use those reserves going forward. Now, I'm not going to get involved in politics. We've heard some of that already. I tend not to. I think we should focus on the job in front of us. But what I do see is that there must be wide agreement in this chamber about this budget. We've already mentioned the amendments that we're going to debate later on. But even with those, I see that those account for just 1% of our revenue budget for next year. 1%, those amendments. So that implies to me that there's very wide agreement. That's something like 99% of our budget is agreed by the whole chamber. That is excellent. And it's a good basis for going forward, but I look forward to the leader's comments on reserves. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Tramble. Councillor Cartwright. Sorry, just a moment, please. Councillor Leader, did you wish to respond?
Just to respond to Councillor Trumble's questions, because he makes some very good points, and Councillor Trumble's been very involved in this council's budget setting work over a number of years, and has been an important and prudent voice in those discussions, and quite properly. So I can give him absolutely the assurance that we will continue to work to minimise the use of reserves. We don't want to be having to prop the budget up through reserves. We want to be working to get out of that position, and that position is gradually improving as the wider recovery takes place around us, and the Cabinet keep that very closely under review and will continue to do so. And Chairman, Councillor Trumbull is absolutely correct around the purpose of reserves, and over many years this council built up its reserves for a reason, which is firstly that actually when people talk about having reserves for a rainy day, and we've had a couple of years worth of rain, and so you need to be able to have the financial ability to deploy reserves when you need to, and that has allowed us, as I said earlier, to provide the financial support to our leisure centres, for example, that they have needed, and it's meant that we haven't been in the position that some other councils, such as Eastbourne, Lib Dem Run Council, the nearest to us, that had to be bailed out by the government because they ran out of money. And secondly, the point of having reserves is so you can support a capital programme such as the one in this budget as well. But we also need to be very prudent and make sure we're also topping up reserves and taking the decisions necessary to replenish them and ensure the council can have a strong financial position, because ultimately that is what underpins the services and investments we want to see for our community. Thanks, Chairman.
Councillor Cartwright. I apologise that we interrupted you.
Not a problem. I just want to cast a slightly gloomy note over the budget, insofar as that since we scrutinised it, we have been subject to events. And I noticed that the provision, for example, for inflation, which we are working to, is a mere 2%. There's been a lot of evidence that unions, workers are going to be demanding this year a lot more than 2%. Quite what it is, we don't know yet. Also, at the same time, we're faced with a massive increase in fuel charges, and we were not aware quite what we were running into when the original figures were prepared. And of course, with the rise of inflation, the cost of food and fuel and whatever, it may impair various people to actually pay their council taxes. So we might have less council tax coming in than we have budgeted for. Has the council actually approached some form of contingency in the back of their minds as to how the figures in reality may differ from the figures which we've been presented with? Because it doesn't look good, and it would be interesting to see how the impacts of these figures come about, particularly on the leisure centres, because they have been costing us a lot of money anyway, and now we know we're going to have to pay more money for the heating of the pools, etc., and also more money for the payments of the staff. So it would be interesting to get a comment on where we go from now, given the fact that life has actually changed even in the short time between when the figures were prepared and where we now stand. Thank you.
Thank you. Do you wish to respond?
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Cartwright makes some fair points, and I think actually probably the best example of things changing kind of when the figures have been prepared is probably going back 2 years when we agreed a budget right at the end of February, And then we had a great big pandemic and pretty much the budget went out the window. So these things do happen, and the answer ultimately is that the budget is dynamic to allow us to manage those sorts of issues in year. And ultimately, Councillor Trumbull will have to cover his ears, but ultimately, if we get forced into that kind of position, then we will end up drawing a little bit more on reserves than perhaps we want to. But over the course of a year, those kind of issues come and go, and ultimately through the budget management process, we continually work to try and get the budget delivered as close as possible, and this council has a very good track record over the years of doing that. Just to pick up on the points around inflation and council tax, it's a fair point in relation to inflation. I mean, I think the answer is that the councils aren't subject to wholly the kind of usual basket of indicators that feed the inflation rate, but clearly things like energy costs and such like will have an impact, and some inflationary impacts on contracts will clearly feed through, and we'll need to keep that under review and take as many mitigating measures as we can. So for example, on things like energy, we've done quite a lot over the years in terms of improving energy efficiency in the council's own estate. In relation to council tax, obviously the risk of that, essentially risk is probably not the right word, but the risk of that in terms of lower income is mitigated in a number of ways. Firstly, the collection fund doesn't relate solely to the district council, but to all of the precepting authorities, and so our share of that actually is only about 10%. Secondly, there is the council tax reduction scheme, and so where families fall into difficult circumstances, that will kick in and provide some of that support anyway, and so that is kind of accounted for through that support mechanism rather than just being an unpaid bill. And of course, ultimately, actually the council's record of collecting council tax is very strong. Doesn't always come in exactly on the right schedule, depending when sometimes people have difficult personal circumstances, but the council's team will always work very sympathetically and proactively with residents to support them as they navigate those issues. So I hope that helps, Councillor Cartwright.
Can I call on Councillor Webster, please?
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to actually comment on the capital projects that are from page 71 onwards, and given some of the comments that have been made earlier about how many budgets people have been here for, I'm feeling positively the baby of the group, as this is my 11th. So the words that the leader actually articulated about having money saved up for rainy days and so on is very true of this council. Ever since I've been a councillor, we have been managing the budget very carefully, and it's because of that foresight actually that we were able to have an IT system that was fit for purpose and enabled us to very quickly move to a new way of working when COVID did strike. And I think that was a very significant development for this council, in that we were able to do that very quickly. And then we've got the Oaklands Windows Phase 5. So in other words, there have been 4 phases before this of improving efficiency at Oaklands in terms of double glazing and so on. And also with the heating phase, it's phase 4 of the heating improvements, and none of this would have been possible if we hadn't had money saved up. Likewise with the play and amenity green spaces strategy, we have got more people living in apartments, more people without gardens in Mid Sussex, and more people are using the parks and outdoor spaces. And we have 135 in Mid Sussex, and those are being upgraded again because of the way that we manage our finances. And I'm actually overall very proud of this budget that all councillors have been involved in, because it's been through the scrutiny process, it's been to Cabinet, and it's finally got to this level. So I am slightly surprised to see again some amendments being proposed at this late stage, but I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Webster. Councillor Eggleston.
Thank you, Chairman. I think this might be the appropriate time to move on to at least one of the amendments, as it's been referred to on a number of occasions. If I may start, because it's been said twice now, so I think it would be just helpful if I clarified that these amendments were not landed on you with 24 hours notice. Councillor Bennett and myself had a call with Jonathan Edwards. I can't remember the date, but it was certainly a couple of weeks ago, and we went through the amendments with him. And prior to that, of course, we discussed them with officers as well. So, you know, we feel that we did the right thing. We did talk to the leader in advance, and we talked to officers in advance about these amendments. So it isn't correct to say that these have just been bounced on you with 24 hours notice, and I hope that you'll just reflect on that as well. May I also say, and I understand the comment that Councillor Marsh made, and I mean no criticism of him for making it, and I know where he's coming from, but in terms of this particular amendment for Burgess Hill, don't just see it as a Burgess Hill issue. And I think the important starting point in the amendment is, you know, a statement that we make as a district council about our district. And it's the first paragraph of the amendment, which says, noting this council's aim to maintain and, where possible, improve the social, economic and environmental well-being of our district and the quality of life for all now and in the future. So that's a vision statement that we make as a district council, and that applies whether it's East Grinstead, Ardingly, Haywards Heath, Turners Hill, Hassocks, Haywards Heath, and also Burgess Hill. So this is a district-wide issue, and I do not believe that there's anyone in this council who thinks that the situation that exists in the town centre of Burgess Hill, and in particular the Martlet Shopping Centre and the vacant Martlet's Hall and Library site is acceptable for us as a district. No one in East Grinstead or Haywards Heath or Ardingly or Balcombe or anywhere else would tolerate that sort of situation, and I would hope all of us as a district council would accept that Burgess Hill deserves better in its town centre. Many members will recall that when New River's first planning application was approved in 2016, it agreed to pay £250,000 to the district council as a fund to support users of Martlet's Hall relocate to other premises. Some £117,000 of that fund was spent, and that left a residual balance of £133,000. That sum sat in a special reserve, and then in 2020 it was transferred to a general reserve because it was felt that there were no other relocations required. So I think it's worth pointing out that the £100,000 that we're seeking is not public money. This is money that has been given by New River, and we're seeking to redeploy that money back into Burgess Hill. I'm sure we agree, as I said, that aesthetically and environmentally and socially, the situation in the town centre is appalling. What we have is blight, and no one in the district, I believe, and in this chamber, finds blight acceptable. So without support from the district council, we cannot address that blight. And I'm asking the district council to help the district, because Burgess Hill is part of the district, to address that situation. Some of you may remember that I asked in May 2019 for support and was unsuccessful. I've made other requests since then, as has the town council. And indeed, the last request made by Burgess Hill Town Council was on the 1st of December 2021, when it invited officers and cabinet members to come and discuss plans to improve the environment and the visual appearance of the Martlet shopping centre. And it's taken, and we're waiting for the meeting, and that meeting will only take place on the 11th of April, 18 weeks after the first request was made.
You've had well over the 3 minutes. Would you be able to?
I'm sure I can wrap up about a minute. This amendment is not seeking to do the job that New River is required to do, which is to maintain its properties. They have those obligations and they should be enforced. This amendment is to make some practical changes to the environment in the Martlet shopping centre and on the Martlet's Hall and library site, so that the appearance of the town centre can be made more attractive. Because I ask you, is it too much to ask for that residents of Burgess Hill have an attractive town centre in which they can walk, shop and enjoy? We're 99% there, said Councillor Trumbull. Let's go that extra stage further and make it 100% and support this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Eggleston. I believe the motion is going to be seconded by Councillor Hicks. Do you wish to speak now? You reserve your right. Okay, I have already two councillors that wish to speak on this. So, Councillor Webster.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to point out that at the budget meeting last year, I gave what I thought was some helpful advice, that it would be helpful to articulate aspirations of the budget at the time of scrutiny, so that those could be worked into the budget by everybody, so that we could get to this point where we could agree or not. And in this instance, I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree with the amendment for the very reason that I cannot agree to £100,000 being set aside for something without seeing some sort of a business plan of how that money is going to be used. Thank you, Chairman.
This is a discussion that we're having regarding the amendment, and I have another councillor wishes to speak. It's Councillor Marsh.
Chairman, I no doubt that Councillor Bennett and Councillor Eggleston did consult with the leader of the council, but us mayor councillors across here, we were bounced on this yesterday. So that's, we weren't told this was going to happen, and we got the report yesterday. So there we are. Right, I've just actually, while you've been speaking, I've been looking at your budget down in Burgess Hill Town Council. You didn't increase your budget at all this year, but you've still managed to find £104,209 for the beehive. So you haven't increased your precept, but you're asking the whole of the district to support your a little bit of Burgess Hill, which, I agree, it's not looking great. It doesn't look great. But I agree with Councillor Webster. Until we actually know what you hope to achieve, you can't expect us to agree to fork out £100,000, which hasn't been budgeted. So it'll have to come out of reserves. Sorry, Councillor Trumbull. It'll have to come out of reserves. So I shan't be supporting it. If you had come, as Councillor Webster has said, to the scrutiny committee prior to it and had put in an amendment then, and it had been debated and gone through, it possibly could have gone through with the budget, but it didn't, because you didn't. And you did it at the last moment. We're not meant to be party political, but this is not the first time this is a Liberal Democrat opposition party have done this. They actually did it on the day, and they did a whole budget. You're just asking for 100,000. They did millions on the day, and that was way before you were a councillor. So that didn't go through either. So I shan't be supporting it, and I agree with Councillor Webster's sentiments. Thank you.
Councillor Ash-Edwards.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Firstly, I should make clear I make no criticism of Councillor Bennett and Councillor Eggleston at all. They shared the motions in a courteous way, and I thank them for that. A few comments in relation to this. I listened very carefully, actually, to Councillor Eggleston's comments, and I was listening so carefully I didn't hear something, which is any explanation of what the money would actually be spent on. Councillor Webster's point was that there's no business case. Well, it's not even that there isn't a business case. We don't even know what the business case would be for. I'm not a great fan of just sort of putting little piggy banks of money aside to come back to. The way we've always worked as a council successfully is that projects get identified, a business case gets considered, and it comes forward as a capital bid or a budget proposal for members to consider with all the facts in front of them so that we can make decisions properly. And it's very difficult to actually I think very difficult for the council to be asked to make a decision on putting some money into a pot without actually knowing exactly how it might be spent or what those proposals might be. And I'm not against spending money on sensible proposals. This budget is full of sensible proposals that we're spending money on. And so if there are some, then let's be having them and we can consider them and they can be discussed. And indeed, the meeting that Councillor Eggleston referred to seems to me to be a sensible place where that discussion could happen. And one of the reasons why it's been delayed, unfortunately, is because of PERDA and the decision of Councillor Eggleston's party to politicise that meeting during an election period, which is unfortunate because otherwise the meeting could have happened. I think next week was the originally proposed date. So, Chairman, I can't support the amendment, and I think we need to make sure we're acting on the basis of proper proposals brought forward in a sensible way with a business plan that can then be considered by members. And as Councillor Marsh, I think, said, actually there is nothing stopping Burgess Hill Town Council as a preset raising body from spending money in the town if it so wishes. I'm sure Councillor Eggleston will say that they already have, and fair enough, but actually there's nothing stopping them doing that any further if they so wish. Thank you, Chairman.
Councillor Pulford, did you want to speak on the amendment?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm just going to point out that Haywards Heath is very much in the district, and Haywards Heath, where possible, also looks to improve the social, economic and environmental well-being of the district and the quality of life for all, for now and in the future. So I applaud those comments. However, I am very aware that, in fact, the Haywards Heath Town Council starts a budgeting process in November and looks to see what they need to be doing to secure those aims for the following 12 months and sets a budget which includes ward budgets for improvements in the wards to achieve all of those considerations. And I would suggest that probably Burgess Hill Town Council needs to do that, and if they really need the 100,000, they could just pop up the precept. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Councillor Bennett, are you speaking in respect of the amendment?
How's this one? Is that okay? Okay, good. I'm incredibly disappointed by the response from the Conservative group about this, and this council did a lot of work last year through a governance review on its culture, and one of the findings of that review was the need for more cross-party working, and we have acted in good faith in that respect. And yes, we sought the meeting with Councillor Ash Edwards. It required a little bit of chasing to get that meeting, but I appreciate that he is a busy man. And when we had that meeting, and I've just checked my calendar, and I think it was 12 days ago, Councillor Ash Edwards said that he would speak to his colleagues and come back to us. And he didn't come back to us all of last week, and on Sunday I sent him a reminder, and on Monday he said he would speak to his group at his group meeting. I'm so sorry, Councillor Ash Edwards, but I don't feel that this cross-party working we're trying to get to in the governance review is working at all here. And that, I'm afraid, Councillor Marsh, is why you didn't know about it, because my understanding was that your group would be consulted 12 days ago. Thank you.
Councillor Stockwell.
Thank you, Chairman. I was on the scrutiny committee that looked at the budget and the corporate plan, and it was very much cross-party. It was the full scrutiny committee were there. Additionally, the papers were given to us 6 weeks in advance of the scrutiny committee meeting, so there was ample time for any amendments to be brought to that meeting for consideration and debate. That didn't happen. There was plenty of time, it was cross-party, and it was well debated. So I will not be supporting the amendment. Thank you.
Okay, I'm keen to go on to the vote on this amendment. Is there, Councillor Trumbull, did you wish to speak? I'm just trying to draw a line.
It's different here. I mean, the House of Commons, we have one side and another side and lines down the middle over which you are not meant to extend your swords. It seems we are putting politics. I'd like to take politics out of this. I have to say I agree with Councillor Eggleston that Burgess Hill is not an attractive looking place. I don't think anybody can disagree with that. It's not. It needs to be looked at. But I do agree with the other points of view. I mean, I've been in business myself for years. Many of us here have also. I would have been crucified. Incidentally, I used to work in Ukraine and Russia, so I feel feelingly about those two countries. But I would have been crucified if I had proposed to spend 100 grand without having any idea of what I was going to spend it on. So, let us agree that Burgess Hill isn't an attractive place. But let us look at this in a proper business fashion and say that, yes, before we do anything, we've got to know what we're doing, why we're doing it, what we're going to achieve, what it's going to get. I don't think we're there. So again, I cannot support this amendment, but I emphasize that there is no politics in that. I look at this as a businessman. Thank you, Chairman.
I'm going to go to Councillor Hicks, who seconded the amendment, please.
I think in seconding this motion, I would highlight the original planning application for the Martlets redevelopment was made 7 years ago, and we've not seen any progress made since. Indeed, the current revision of the plan is likely to be unviable in terms of any chance of the existing proposal going forward. We've yet to see a glimmer of light on the horizon. This site is owned by the District Council. It's the District Council's responsibility. The Bartlett's Hall was knocked down, no replacement. our Performing Arts Centre gone. We're, as a town council, we are working almost alone to try and find the funding to replace that. And I'm disappointed that we should be burdened with other aspects in terms of taking on the district council's property portfolio. I think we saw Councillor Prue Moore said a few years ago of the Martlets redevelopment, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Well, she was right, but not in the way that she meant it. And it seems to be taking all our lifetimes before we can see any redevelopment of Burgess Hill Town Centre. In the meantime, residents are left with neglected shops and vacant plots. Our proposal is about showing a commitment to the town centre, something that we haven't seen the last couple of years, and to enable the council to take immediate action to improve the street scene in terms of Councillor Trimble's comments, and make use of the vacant land from the demolition of the Martlets Hall. Now, it's good to hear a meeting is planned, and yes, we want to promote cross-party working wherever possible. That's the only way that we will achieve results. But it's just, without a commitment, a firm decision in terms of the funding is available, we question whether that commitment is there. And we've just tonight, we've had 9 transfers to reserves, a 200,000 to the efficiency-specific reserve. Where was the business case for those? Some of those are, I know, specific funding, but there's nothing more noddy than an efficiency-specific reserve if you want to get into the detailed budgets. I think the town council previously submitted a bid last June for 16,000 for a 6-month project to make use of the vacant site where the Martlets have been. That was turned down. 6 months, we said it would be there slightly longer than 6 months. That was last June. And the council turned it down because of that. It would have gone over the 6 months target. Well, we're not going to see, at this rate, we're not going to see development in 6 years. So our concern is that something happens to that town centre, and the district council, not the town council, is responsible for that site. I'm sure we all want to bring back shoppers to Burgess Hill, cross-party, and this proposal will show a clear commitment from the council to right the wrongs of the neglect of the current tenant and to take responsibility. It owns the freehold and it should be responsible for supporting Burgess Hill to get shoppers back in the town. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hicks. I'm now going to move to vote on the amendment by a show of hands. Those in favour of the amendment, please raise their hands. Those against the amendment? Twenty-three. Any abstentions? No. Yes, one. No.
18 in favour of the amendment, 23 against and 2 abstentions.
Right. We're going to now move on to the second amendment that is before us. Actually, before we do so, before we went to the first amendment, we hadn't finished the debate. So there were a couple of people a couple of councillors, we didn't have the opportunity to speak on the original motion, one of which was Councillor Gibson. Did you wish to speak at this point on the original motion? Yes.
Councillor Trumble's raising a point of order, I think.
Chairman, we had the debate on the budget moved by Councillor Ash-Edwards. We've then gone to an amendment. The amendment's been lost, and so we're now back to the original motion. And Councillor Gibson indicated a wish to speak on that.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'm going to start by referring back to Councillor Trumbull and indeed to Councillor Cartwright, because I wanted to talk about the use of reserves in the later stages of the planned period. I'm quite happy with the budget, and I will support the budget for the coming year. It's the later years that worry me and the draw upon that. Tonight I'm very much in a cooperative working mode, so I'm not going to mention the 30 million that the council has received from the New Homes bonus over the past 10 years, which has of course underpinned the prudent conservative strategy for management of resources. What concerns me is just over those 3 years past 22-23 is that the total sum that we're looking for from reserves, general reserves, is 4 million, and against a total revenue budget of 53. Now there's risk across all of that 53, which means that this position is going to worsen. And so I think that we should move from a sort of, if you like, these qualitative statements of it's going to be bad, we're going to have to do something, to really face up to the reality. The quantitative position is something like 10% that we will have to face up to over those 3 years concerned. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winkler. Councillor Cromie.
Thank you, Chairman. I've listened to the comments members have made with great interest, and one of the things that I wanted to add to the debate is putting it into a little bit of perspective. So I was born in Croydon, my mum still lives in Croydon, and I often work in Croydon, just down the M23. I don't think anyone in this room has escaped the notice that Croydon is bankrupt as a council. In my day job, I hear horror stories from councils up and down the country of leisure centres being closed, libraries being closed, services not being offered, taxpayers paying for services that they've not been given. So when I look at this budget, not only is this budget reassuring residents that the services that they're providing, they are actually getting, but it's looking to the future, it's still investing, it's still looking to build a better district. If you were to ask anyone who currently lives in Croydon how they feel about their budget, they are in a very different position. So I think perspective is important in this debate.
Thank you, Councillor Cromie. And the last councillor I have is Andrew Lee.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. So just an observation on the budget, and really picking up on the theme of cutting our cloth. The budget does contain provisions for officer pay increases, of course, which is understandable given the increasing cost of living. Though, of course, this has to be picked up by members of the community, many of whom won't see a pay rise, although there is at least a rebate for some. What I would like to ask is that due consideration is given to sharing this pay rise equally amongst all officers as an absolute and equal amount, rather than a relative or percentage pay rise. This would cost the same to the council, but it would benefit most of those officers who are paid the least and presumably have the greatest need. I wonder if that could be considered. Thank you.
We're now going to move the second amendment that before us, which is proposed by Councillor Janice Henwood, please.
The last sentence, purchase and install a modular changing places toilet in the Orchards Shopping Centre in Haywards Heath at a cost of £100,000 drawn from the General Reserve. So you know exactly where the £100,000 is going to go. It is going to go to unique toilet facilities. These have hoists. They're absolutely essential if you're in a wheelchair, if you have a child in a wheelchair. They are essential for you to be able to use public facilities. So 2 questions. already you know where the £100,000 will go. In addition, we have a lot of vulnerable people who need these facilities. We in Burgess Hill have 3 changing places toilets. In addition, I am speaking as a district councillor. I do not live in Haywards Heath. So I am supporting and encouraging Haywards Heath community where there are no public changing places, special facilities, to please put them in place. And if I can remind you, about 30 minutes ago, our leader of the council, and I will quote, "This corporate plan and budget will focus on, quote, what is important to our residents." And I will also quote what the leader said, "We will support vulnerable people in our community." So I would encourage all of us as district councillors, I don't live in Haywards Heath, that we support this most essential facility to make Haywards Heath an inclusive town. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Henwood. I believe this amendment is being seconded by Councillor Anison Bennett. Do you wish to speak now or reserve your right? Reserve my right. Thank you. Anyone like? Councillor Cromie.
Thank you. I'm delighted that our Lib Dem colleagues have talked about 2 things today. They've given an accurate timeline of when they've spoken to the leader of the council about their amendments, and they've talked about cross-party working. So on the 25th of January, I was contacted by a number of residents alerting me to a Facebook post about changing places toilets. On the 25th of January, I'm looking at the email now, I sent that across to the leader of the council. So let's make this point very clear. The changing places toilets were already being discussed actively in January. We have had countless conversations. I have spoken to 250 residents alone on this. I have a meeting with Kangaroos next Friday to talk about making sure those toilets are totally fit for purpose. They will be changing places toilets. But actually, that's not what residents want. What they want are clean toilets, they want safe toilets, and they want them not in a car park where half of our residents contacted me, said they didn't even know that they were there. They certainly didn't feel safe in those toilets. So actually, what we're looking at as a council is moving those toilets to a better position, making them accessible to everybody, and making sure they're well maintained, they're clean, and they're in the heart of the shopping centre. And I know my Councillor Hillier will like this, bringing a footfall into our shopping centre, because actually one of the most disappointing comments that we saw was people would rather go home than use the toilets. We don't want people to leave our towns. We want them to stay. We want them to enjoy our parks, and we want them to enjoy the Orchard Shopping Centre. So I'm surprised, if anything, to see the amendment there, because it's something that the council is undertaking. A press release went into the MIDI to let residents know this is very much in hand.
Thank you, Councillor Cromie. Councillor Bates.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Right. As a resident of Haywards Heath and a user of facilities in Haywards Heath, and there is a changing room of this nature at the Dolphin Centre. I happen to have to help one of my residents the other day through the changing rooms, because the situation is a really good facility, no doubt about it. It's got all the equipment, etc. The only problem was that there was 2 sexes here, a male and a female, and they couldn't go through that particular changing room, the male changing room, because there was a lady pushing the wheelchair. And of course, there was no power-assisted doors. So that's my recent experience of that facility. It's really good. So hopefully those sort of things will be taken on board. And I would have thought, having said that we've got this on board, I appreciate what Councillor Cromie is saying, that we would have identified a site, a suitable site by now, if this is the case. And also I have had people approach me, and I've looked in those toilets in Haywards Heath in the car park, and they're not the best. So I'd be interested to know where we're going to provide this facility in respect of how much nearer you can get to the orchards and where that toilet facility is at the moment, which a lot of people have got to use anyway in relation to the town, and it's flat, etc. So I will listen out and hear more about this particular project. I think the £100,000 is an incredibly big sum of money for it, but there you are.
Thank you, Councillor Bates. Councillor Marsh.
Thank you, Chairman. Actually, £100,000 for a block of toilets isn't a lot of money. Not even coming close to a lot of money. Here in East Grinstead, the car park, King's car park, the toilet block there cost the district council 235,000. Councillor Ash Edwards was the portfolio holder at the time. It's about 235,000. We had to fork out for that one. So, like Councillor Bates, sorry, I should have stayed with you, shouldn't I? Like Councillor Bates, I don't like using the toilets in the car park there. I think they're well past their sale-by date, which I think is what Councillor Cromie was saying. We do need a fit-for-purpose ones, pretty much along the lines of the ones we did down in World's End. Those who can recall, we had that put in down there, and that's been well received by the locals down there. Burgess Hill very lucky, they've got 3. I think up here, I think there's 1. Is there 2 up here? I've been told there's 2 up here. There's 1 I know down in the Dolphin Centre. So I understand why you would like it, but it's in hand. So I think you're premature trying to get 100,000, because reality is it's going to cost a hell of a lot more than £100,000. So we'll wait to see the Cabinet's proposals on that. No doubt it will be scrutinised by scrutiny or by this council. So I won't support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Marsh. No other speakers. I'm going to go to the second. Oh, I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I've listened to a lot of the debate this evening with increasing levels of frustration, because there's just been this consistent refrain that why haven't opposition members come through the appropriate channels? Why haven't we given more notice? I'd just like to reflect a little bit on my personal experiences of trying to engage constructively on a range of different issues. And members will remember that a couple of budgets ago, we agreed a special reserve on sustainability. And the committee, the advisory panel on sustainability and climate change that was intended to allocate where that money would be spent was promptly abolished soon afterwards. But nevertheless, I tried to engage constructively and proactively with the relevant cabinet member, with relevant officers, with other members of the council. And I have a professional background in sustainability matters. I was offering my services for free and proposing a whole range of very specific ideas with particular budgets attached. It hasn't gone anywhere. And with apologies to Councillor Belzy, who I actually think genuinely wants to achieve things in that space, I'm driven to conclude that there simply isn't the will within the majority party to deliver on that. Similarly, on refugee matters, when I brought a motion some time ago in which I engaged with members across a period of about 2 months in advance, precisely because I wanted to avoid it becoming a divisive or party political matter, I received absolutely no engagement whatsoever. And when it came to the point where we were voting on it, members of the Conservative Party abstained, despite the fact I'd gone out of the way to make it completely inoffensive to any political considerations whatsoever. And so I think when it comes to things like this amendment and the Changing Places toilet, can you blame us if we bring it in a way that we hope might make a difference? And if it is in hand, and if it is going to cost more than £100,000, then just agree the amendment, because it's going to be spent anyway. What's the problem with doing that? My reflections on this is that actually, when we try to do things through the appropriate channels, we end up, it's like kicking a bouncy castle. We can't get anywhere. It's like inertia. It's incredibly frustrating. So when we try and do things constructively, that's what happens. And then, when we try and do things in a different way, in which we might actually get some airing to the issues that we care about, and we bring it to full council, this is the response we get. And so I'd just like others to reflect on that personal experience of the ways in which I have tried to engage constructively and generally met with absolutely no cooperation whatsoever. On this particular amendment, just agree it. We all agree it's needed. We all agree it's going to cost money, probably cost more than 100,000. Agree the amendment. Where's the problem? Thank you.
Councillor Trumbull.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Dempsey gets frustrated. By God, I get frustrated too. This is a council chamber where we transact business. It is not a kindergarten where we express feelings. I don't want to hear people's feelings. I want to hear facts, what we're going to do. If you have feelings, sir, discuss them outside of this chamber, not within. I don't want to get into politics again. I keep saying I do not want to get into politics. I deal with facts. And, Chairman, I am confused. And if I'm confused, other members here are confused, and if we're confused, people out there watching this are going to be confused. I was told earlier on that this changing places toilet has been proposed and agreed, and I'd be interested to hear what the budget is for it, but I've been told also it's going to be in the shopping centre. Now again, I go back to my time as a businessman. I've only worked in 30 countries, you know, but the principles are the same. You spend money when you have a jolly good business case for it. Now, if I came along to my bosses in New York and said, I want to spend money that you have already committed to spend, which is the case here, I'd have been kicked all around the room. Now, that happens in private enterprise. We're asking here to commit to spending more money of the public's money that we've already committed to spend. That's bonkers. So, Chairman, I'm sorry. I don't know what we're talking about here. I don't know why we're talking about it. We're going to do it anyway. I cannot support this amendment. And there's no feelings in that. There's no politics in that. It is fact. Thank you.
Councillor Bennett. Yeah, you've got
Chair, you said spoken about we're dealing in facts. Well, Councillor Henwood didn't actually mention that we sat on the same scrutiny committee together, and at the very start when we got elected, Councillor Henwood asked multiple times, can public toilets please be added to the work programme? We kept being told the work programme was too full to fit public toilets in, but some meetings we had of the scrutiny committee, we had one item which would last, say, 20 minutes or half an hour. Some of our scrutiny meetings would be cancelled due to a lack of business. We could have discussed changing places toilets for the whole of the district and relocating dirty toilets from the orchards to elsewhere, but this council has not been prepared to add it to the work programme for us to actually debate it.
I'm going to move to Councillor Ash-Edwards, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. So I want to start by congratulating Councillor Cromie on the excellent campaign that she has run for a Changing Places toilet in Haywards Heath, and she's quite right around the timescales. She raised it following consultation she had with residents in January. I raised it at the cabinet meeting that discussed the budget on the 14th of February. All of that before any discussion at all about any amendments, and you know, just in response to a couple of comments that have been made about how I've dealt with the amendments. I'm afraid cross-party working does not mean that I summon an emergency meeting of my group to discuss amendments that could have been raised at any point since the budget was published in December. I will discuss amendments with my group at its next meeting and provide feedback, which is exactly what I did. This amendment tries to tell us to do something that is already being done. Let me be very clear, because I'm sure there'll be lots of stuff on social media after this meeting. Very clear. This council is committed to delivering a Changing Places toilet in Hayward Heath. However, there is more. We want to improve and deliver new public toilets, male and female, for everybody in Hayward Heath, not just the changing places. We need to do changing places, we need to do new public toilets as well. That's not covered by this amendment. It's been quite interesting listening to a couple of comments. Councillor Bates says he wants to hear the details. So why aren't we having the discussion when the details are in front of members? Councillor Dempsey's acknowledged that it will probably cost more than £100,000. So why does the amendment only cover £100,000? And so this amendment wouldn't actually deliver what members say they want to deliver. And so the way forward is, as I actually outlined at Cabinet on the 14th of February, which is that when the work is completed in full, surveys are done, the exact costings are clear, a report will come to Cabinet later this month and will come on to Council at the following meeting with a capital bid, properly set out, with a business plan, with the details that members have said they want to hear, so that the Council can agree a plan to provide a changing places toilet and new modern public toilets in Hayward Heath. That's what we're doing. That's what we were doing before this amendment ever got raised. And again, congratulate Councillor Cromie for the work that she has done on that. And so, actually, Chairman, I would encourage Councillor Henwood to withdraw this amendment so that actually we can come back to the debate sensibly with details in front of members at the subsequent meetings, and we can deliver what we need to deliver for people in Hayward Heath. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Whittaker, did you wish to speak? No. Thank you. Oh, okay. Councillor Henwood, you did not wish to withdraw the amendment? No, that's fine. Okay, so we're going to go on to Councillor Bennett, who is the seconder to speak.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd like to second this motion, and I think I would like to start by thanking the Section 151 officer, Mr. Peter Stewart, for his professionalism and assistance in preparation of both of our amendments this evening. In terms of timelines, if we're going to have to go back to that, what Councillor Cromie needs to bear in mind is that the Conservative group do not have sole access to the internet or to the residents of Hayward Heath, and we also speak to them. And so by late January, we were in conversation with the Section 151 officer about this proposal and about what the likely costs would be. Those who are questioning the costs, the £100,000 is based on the Section 151 officer's best estimates when he's spoken to his surveyors. That has been done properly. At the last council, I think it was a meeting where the conduct was such that afterwards a senior colleague reminded me that this council had lost sight of its motto. And the motto, so you all know, is the good of the people comes first. This amendment seeks to achieve exactly this by giving our residents the assurance that a changing places toilet is guaranteed. The Conservative approach of bringing this to Cabinet and then to Council lacks that assurance and relies on a capital bid process, which in the time of spiralling inflation could get overtaken by events. These amendments were drafted in good faith, consulting with the Section 151 officer, as I've said, and seeking time with the leader at the earliest opportunity. They were put forward in the spirit of fostering a better culture of cross-party working. We even suggested that the Conservative group propose and the Liberal Democrats second the amendment on the basis that we knew that there had been work going on in the Conservative group on this. So in conclusion, I'm disappointed, once more, disappointed that the Conservatives struggle so very hard to work on a cross-party basis, but more importantly, that this administration has lost sight and that we come here to ensure that the good of the people comes first. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bennett. I'm now going to move to vote on the amendment by a show of hands. Could those in favour of the amendment, could they please raise their hands? Those against the amendment, please raise their hands. Any councillors wishing to abstain? Yes, please.
That's 14 in favour of the amendment, 25 against and 4 abstentions, so the amendment is lost.
Thank you. So we're now going to revert to the original corporate plan, the proposal on the table, and I think we need Councillor Belsey to speak as the seconder.
Thank you, Chairman. And obviously we've already had quite a bit of debate on the budget and the amendments before us this evening, and thank you very much to everybody of all parties for their contributions so far to the debate. I'm very pleased to second the budget, which will see a Band D council tax increase of £4.95 per year. I appreciate that in these challenging times no one wants to pay more council tax, but of course these are challenging times for councils too, and no one has been unaffected by the pandemic. This pandemic, and indeed an uncertain and indeed horrifying global backdrop, highlights how important it is that we have to work to retain our financial independence and rely as little as possible on others. And I'm very grateful for the previous administrations that allow us to be in a relatively strong financial position that allows us to propose this budget this evening. In this respect, it's heartening that the corporate plan and budget still presents an ambitious plan for our council that I hope we can all stand squarely behind. Some of my colleagues have highlighted some of the issues from their portfolios and what they will be looking to deliver over the coming year. I note Councillor Salisbury's not here this evening from planning, and I'm sure he would have wanted to highlight in particular some of the work going on in that portfolio, particularly in respect of the work with temporary accommodation, the need of which unfortunately continues to rise. We continue to acquire temporary accommodation, and over the last 2 years the council's acquired 23 units for temporary accommodation and will continue to explore all opportunities to acquire more over the coming year. And working with planning, which as we know is always a contentious and difficult issue, but working with planning and house builders, we continue to make good progress on delivery of affordable housing, anticipating delivering another 250 affordable units in 2022-23. Although of course we all appreciate that demand for affordable housing remains high. The leader's already touched on a few issues from my own portfolio, but I will be pleased to see the resumption of the largest food waste trial in West Sussex following its initial postponement during COVID. The initialising of the Parks Improvement Plan, which will improve our most popular leisure spaces and amenities across our 3 towns, and this year in Peace Pottage as well. And we will work to ensure that sports pitches and facilities are also subject to appropriate investment. We'll continue to work on master planning the Centre for Outdoor Sports, an example, and I intend to work closely with our sports clubs and sports councils to make sure we identify the right future investment needs. And I'd like to highlight in particular the work that Councillor Whitaker has done on that to bang the drum for that particular area as well. Obviously we've got playground improvements coming forward in East Grinstead and Haywards Heath, and we'll also be rolling out the electric vehicle charging points in many of our car parks across the district. We'll be putting together and submitting local cycling and walking infrastructure plans for our 3 towns, which we'll use as a basis to seek further funding for important road and walkway improvements. And we'll also be pursuing an expanding rewilding programme after the success of last year's programme, and I look forward to the debate on our sustainable economic strategy and our journey to net zero. And in respect to that, I'd like to thank Councillor Dempsey for the support and information that he has provided with, and I've enjoyed working with him in terms of taking some of those things forward, particularly highlight things like the carbon baselining strategy, and not just Councillor Dempsey, I'm sure like my other colleagues, across parties we've all got different matters of interest and expertise, and it's always thought-provoking to have discussions with people, whatever political background we may have. And I hope that will continue as we move forward. Of course, there are going to be further challenges ahead, and we won't always agree on every decision, But listening to voices around the chamber, there are many exciting projects and services for all to look forward to and be proud of, which will benefit our residents across Mid Sussex whom we're here to serve. Personally, I'm very enthusiastic of and look forward to bringing these projects to fruition, and I hope that everyone can share that enthusiasm and be able to support the budget put forward this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Belsey. I'm going to state the recommendations before us being voted on for the benefit of members and viewers and listeners. The full recommendations are on pages 20 to 24. I'm going to read the summary and include reference to any agreed amendments, which we have none. So I'm just going to read. The budget recommendations are in 3 parts. 3.1 covers those that refer to the approval of the corporate plan. 3.2 covers those that refer to the approval of the council's expenditure. 3.3 covers those that refer to the council's responsibilities for calculating council taxes for the Mid Sussex area. Tom Clark, are we going to have a recorded vote, I believe?
Yes, Chairman, we have to have a recorded vote on this. So I'll start the recorded vote for, against or abstain. Yep. Councillor Ash Edwards. For. Councillor Bates. Yes. Councillor John Belsey. For. Councillor Margaret Belsey.
For.
Councillor Alison Bennett. Against. Councillor Liz Bennett. Councillor Brown. Against. Councillor Cartwright. Against. Councillor Chapman. Against. Councillor Clark. For. Councillor Cogunner-White. Councillor Coote. For. Councillor Cornish. Against. Councillor Cromie. For. Councillor DeBell. For. Councillor Demir. For. Councillor Dempsey. Councillor Edwards. Against. Councillor Eggleston. Against. Councillor Eaves. Against. Councillor Forbes. For. Councillor Gibbs. Councillor Gibson. For. Councillor Henwood. Against. Councillor Hicks. Against. Councillor Hillier. For. Councillor Jackson. Against. Councillor Knight. For. Councillor Andrew Lee. For. Councillor Anthea Lee. For. Councillor Marsh. For. Councillor Mockford. For. Councillor Peacock. For. Councillor Phillips. For. Councillor Pulfer. For. Councillor Smith. For. Councillor Sprashy.
Against.
Councillor Swetman.
For.
Councillor Trumbull.
100% for.
Councillor Walker.
For.
Councillor Webb.
For.
Councillor Webster.
For.
And Councillor Whittaker.
For.
Okay. I've missed Councillor Stockwell for some reason. She's not on my list. I apologise, Councillor Stockwell. That's 29 in favour and 14 against. So the budget is carried.
Thank you very much, and thank you again for your attendance this evening. I'm going to close the meeting at 9 p.m. Please remain in place until the live stream is ended. And thank you again for attending.